Okay, welcome to our Bucky weekend call for this weekend of May 9th and 10th. We're just beginning. Manu is joining us right now, but we're all here. Anne will be here when she gets done taking care of her grandkid. And I haven't heard from her granddaughter, and I haven't heard from Fred for a while. So,
Yeah,
has
what's going
anybody?
on?
I don't know. He was traveling in Europe, and maybe he's back. I'm not sure what's up with that. So, anyway, we're about to get started. Manu, you're here as we begin. So let's start it off with you. How are you feeling and what do you anticipate for today?
That's really catching me cold. I'm just waking out just now. So anyway, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm ready. Um, I expect conversions to the end of this book. Um, Joe, how do you feel? What do you, what shape are you in? What do you expect?
I'm feeling okay. My stomach's bothering me, but feeling good. Um, I get to spend some time with a friend. Um, my sister left me a really nice note saying, my mother would be excited to see where I am. And since it's Mother's Day tomorrow, it's a little bit, it's the first time, so but that she would be happy where I am. And meaning the actual physical location, um, which is nice. Lee, how are you feeling? What do you want to take away from? Oh, as far as what I want to take away, yeah, I look forward to finishing the book. Lee, how do you feel? What would you like to take away from that?
I'm feeling great. We just listened to music way down where I've never been in Riverton, out in a windy outdoor patio, and about froze myself. But luckily, they lit a fire and I hovered over it. And I'm very grateful I've got a blanket on now. What I am looking forward to is seeing the end and all that everyone has to say about the end and the beginning, whatever that is. Steve.
I should be at the end.
Oh, who's left?
Richard.
Richard. Oh, I thought you spoke. Richard, how are you today? And what is your takeaway? Or what is what you want out of today? Go ahead, Steve. There. Nope, wrong person.
Yeah, thank you.
There you are.
I'm feeling kind of stretched in two directions right now. I just today spent a very positive morning with the Trim Tab group talking about the Fuller Festival weekend that occurred 2 weeks ago in Carbondale, Illinois. And several of the Trim Tab members were actually there, so we got a kind of a feedback of all the different things that were going on. Um, the contrast between people who were there who at one point knew Fuller or worked with him or spent some time with him, and young people from the university in Carbondale who were um, new and enthusiastic sort of participants in the weekend. Sort of the introduction of the new world game, and they tried it out. Um, and And on the other side, I'm really feeling the impact of our daughter's widowhood that started just 3 months ago, 4 months ago, and the whirlwind of things that she's had to deal with more or less on her own. Lots of friends around and people supporting her, but struggling with dealing with an estate and uh, having to sell a home and uh, stage it so that in a real estate sort of presentation. And had three people come and see it already. And looks like she's got an offer from one of them, um, which I hope goes through. But once it goes through, I think it's going to be another big loss in the sense of that was her home, their home for 10 years. Um, and she'll have to leave and move and go to another city. So it's a real stretch. Um, and what I'm looking forward to in finishing the book is that uh, I guess that in some ways it completes a bit of a full circle, having spent an actual uh, morning or maybe a full day, I don't remember, with Amy Edmondson at Fuller's 100th birthday celebration in San Diego in 1995. And the organizer of that event was in Carbondale, and he was on the line today. So it also felt like another kind of full circle um, over these last 30 years. So I, I guess in some ways I'm going to feel excited that we're finishing the book, but I'm going to feel the loss of parting from Amy and the kind of connection I felt with her over all these years. So, Steve, how are you feeling and what's your anticipation for today?
Well, I don't, I'm not very optimistic about finishing the book tonight. It'd be nice if we did, maybe, but then we'd have to come up with something else. I wish that on all of these studies that I was getting it I'm convinced that as we read it together, I get way more out of it than I would have gotten if I'd read it on my own. And we're in a final chapter, design science, uh, which is kind of exciting. Um, and I guess I'm just ready for whatever flows from this. So um, I went out and heard my buddy's music. I spent a day, 2 days yesterday helping out a buddy who was a music buddy as well. So my life is full, really full right now, and I'm delighted to leave that all behind and join our conversation tonight. So that'll be really nice. Okay, cool. Um, my information is that we're starting on page 287, which is the science chapter. And I believe that's correct. If I'm wrong, someone please tell me. And we are recording, right? Yep, we're recording. So everything's going really, really well. With no further ado, I'll read a thing or two, and then whoever wants to read can read from there. Joe kind of went dark for a minute, so that's fine. 16, design science. I did not set out to design a geodesic dome. I set out to discover the principles operative in universe. For all I knew, this could lead to a pair of flying slippers. That's cool. I like that. This playful declaration stands as a concise summary of the philosophy behind Fuller's life's work and introduces the relationships of synergetics to design. Design science, in the most general terms, maintains that faithful observance of universe is the basis of successful invention. The idea, therefore, is not to invent some strange new gadget, hoping there will be a market for it, but rather to tap into the exquisite workings of nature. While this significance of science discoveries is not always immediately understood, the accumulated generalized principles have been applied in innovative ways throughout history, producing artifacts which have gradually transformed the physical environment. Therein lies the key to humanity's success aboard Spaceship Earth, explains Bucky Fuller. Comprehensive anticipatory design science. Characteristically, his title expands to embrace the full significance of this vital human endeavor. Fuller defines design as the deliberate ordering of components. That's a good definition. Thus distinguishing from randomness. Design implies the presence of intellect. This definition is worth our serious attention, for the word is often associated with the concept of decoration, secondary, or a superficial embellishment, as opposed to thoroughly developed systems. Fuller was quick to point out the universe overflows with evidence of design. Unimaginably intricate and reliable energy patterns reveal eternal design interrelationship principles. Technology, to Fuller, is principle in action, and so universe is nothing but incredible technology. It's always its awesome complexity is the inspiration for Fuller's phrase, intellectual integrity of eternally regenerative universe. A weighty title attempting to convey a non-anthropomorphic respect for greater, in fact, all-encompassing divine intelligence. Combining this newly defined word with science to describe a new discipline or field rather enriches its significance. Science hints at the necessary rigor, suggesting a systematic new study. Fuller thereby expands the realm of design. The scientific method is essential for design science. Design science involves the application of principle. He points out that generalized principles are eternal truths as opposed to special case statements or transient facts, and as such are inherent aspects of reality waiting to be discovered. Only human beings are able to discern such truths, science, and thereby participate in their own evolution, design. Design science is thus saturated with meaning. Humanity alone has access to the design laws of the universe, and that has determined our unique evolutionary function. Just as bees are meant to cross-pollinate, we are meant to solve problems. Without specialized long breaks or wings or other role-specific physical traits, human beings have learned to exploit mechanical advantage, discipline the electron, travel more quickly than the fastest leopard, and fly farther than the strongest bird. Our unique advantage is a faculty called mind, which can integrate disparate facts of experience. We are therefore deliberately designed to be comprehensivists, while all other creatures are specialists. This brings us to the next aspect of Fuller's wordy title.
Yeah,
okay, let's pause there. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I believe we actually did cover a little bit about comprehensivism last week. However, I thought that was worth repeating. I think that there's a lot that's being said there. I mean, specifically, if you want to really get into it, what it means to be conscious is really what's being talked about to some, that what does it mean to be aware, to be able to determine a pattern that is unrepeatable, that you're saying is not only repeatable, but it's beneficial to some degree. So one of the one of the terms that you had talked about that actually had caught my attention had to do with essentially how, yeah, unimaginable, intricate, and reliable energy patterns reveal the relationships between things. So, basically how there is a, through these patterns and using even, technology, we're able to determine, obviously generalized principles, but we're pattern seeking machines is one of the fundamental ideas that I would say that's important out of this, is that our mind works to look for patterns. And this is really important because, we were talking about it previously. When you're talking about having an observation, and you're talking about fourness and you're talking about fuller, then, that you're observing, you're making connections between A, B, C, and D, and the strength of those connections that you're then making, that's what nature's revealing to us. But we're using tools like technology in order to make those discoveries. And so what are those tools consist of? They consist of all the things that we've been talking about for such a long time. Looking at things like radiative and gravitational, and so it's not necessarily like using a tool per se, but even using fundamental concepts like space-time to really, that then reveals a set of patterns, so that we actually then, even concepts that Fuller talks about when it's the idea of lag and how the mind perceives reality. I mean, all of these things are fundamental to what she's saying, and that leads to the idea of anticipatory design. I mean, so this is fundamental. This is like where she's wrapping it up, I think.
Wow.
Welcome.
Cool. Any other comments or thoughts?
No.
Well, Manu's got some. I think I might have some too.
Cool. Go right ahead, Manu.
Okay, I was just going to say one of the words that I think of is tinkering, having in mind the Northern Star or our Southern Cross of generalized principles known to you. Because you may say, okay, you're waiting to identify a pattern like this and like that. Well, it might not come. That it might be there and you're not able to identify to it. I think we should be in a state of permanent tinkering. I think of your approximative, successive readjustments, Steve. But knowing that everything is changing is a principle, everything is moving. If everything is moving and that the line of flows are curved, there's going to be changes. And we should be permanently doing something, rejiggling a little bit the systems that we have anti-entropically established in order either to guide towards better or to discard because they are no more relevant. So practically, that's the way I see it. Your frame of mind should be that of a tinkerer in the anticipatory design. And in your, Joe, and this word for you, in your anti-entropic endeavor to be comprehensivist. What I mean is that if there are 12 dimensions that you need to validate a concept into before you move, you don't need to wait for the 12 dimensions. Because necessarily, if it's going to be a principle or it's going to be adhering to the principle, there's going to be proclivity of the local applications of those that you know towards something that is like. What I mean is that you have to build up to a critical mass. The critical mass, in my definition, is, not my definition, my understanding is when all the software, that is, all of the dimensions are present, but not yet manifested in such a way that we can see it, but that is enough to ignite life that is independent from the model system, or not independent, that can beat as that of a model system. Right. It's like if you take, I always like to take models. This is models weekend. And let me just put it. How does a woman know that she's pregnant? It has happened. Pregnancy leads to life. So there was an inception, but a gestation of that inception in the process that will lead to a kick or an hormonal change to the level that is sensitive to the senses of the housing mother. And the mother will say, here, we talk a little bit, especially when a young girl, when they start vomiting. Then it starts being possible, or when they miss to miss the period, or something like that. So that is what I mean. So you build towards it, it's like I was studying this weekend the collapse of the cube octahedron into the icosahedron, and I was trying to understand it by a globe, an umbrella that have 12 spokes, and then you are twisting it in angle, and it's compressing. It's compressing, and there are addings, because I found that the greatest common angular, or what you call the maximum common angular the divider of the angle of the pentagon and the octagon is 12 degrees. No. So my notion is that as you are twisting like this, it's compressing because there is a spring that is bringing everything in. Note that the axes haven't changed. The 12 axis is not changed. So you compress every time that you make, let's say 12 degrees, a segment is compressed, that is folded. And you do another 12 degrees, 2 times is folded again. And you do another 12 degrees is folded. When you do that 5 times, 12 degrees times 6 becomes 60 degrees. And then it collapses into the icosahedron. Do you see what I'm saying? You fold in increment of 12 degrees. And that process is accumulative. If it accumulates, the first time that you screw 12 degrees, it compresses by an arc or something like that. A tangential, I have like a tangential arc. Then you screw again. Then you screw again. All of this is accumulative to a critical mass of between 4 and 5. And as you click 5, that thing gets into the icosahedron.
Say the last one again. Could you repeat that last line?
As you click 5,
Yeah.
you've done. We're trying to count now, so we're not going to do it continuously. We're doing like Bucky does on his I always forget the word. Richard use the word all the time.
Tensegrity.
No. It's an artifact to do the change. Anyway, you are twisting. You have two poles, and you are twisting angularly.
Yeah.
And you are pressing in. That's what a normal spiral will do. And in this case, it's a double spiral. It's one spiral like this, another one like that. It is doing that. So the double spiral twist first in total of 12 degrees. Second, it becomes 24 degrees.
Right.
That is twice. 3 times it becomes 36 degrees. 4 times it becomes 48 degrees. 48 degrees is right at the point of criticality. When you switch it by 1 degree, it collapses into 60 degrees. And then you have an additional then to the 72 degrees that were squeezing progressively down, and the 12 degrees that was increasing down. The two just the 5 and the 3, because the axes haven't changed. It's still 12 axes centered at the center of the polyhedron. The 12, it does this. I was looking at the book here. Is like the icosahedral like this stuff. You see this one?
Yeah. Yes.
So it is decreasing as you twist. The length is decreasing, and not decreasing. The projection of a length onto the stuff is decreasing, and it squeezes back into it. It goes into the icosahedron because you have created one of the edges by your progressive thing. Now I'm trying to geometrically and mathematically express it, and that's my difficulty, but I can feel it. And I was trying to divide 4 divide by 6 or whatever, but that is, to me, that is an expression that I was trying to say of a critical something. But you know that the icosahedron exists. And what you can do anti-entropically to create it is to twist and to push. Twist and push. Angular and translation. Those are the 2 things that we have. Remember that we go from the basic binary system, always.
Yeah.
The binary, topologically, the binary system that we have is the rotation and the translation. Those are the only 2 things that we play in the music of making the icosahedron. So if I'm tinkering, I'm going to make a rotation and a transition and see the result anticipatorily. Does it go towards improving my system? I improve it. But I didn't have that knowledge from the beginning. What can I do? I'll just be acting like knowledge, practice without knowledge. Like Confucius says, that is dangerous.
Right.
Yes. or I will be inactive. I will do nothing. It's knowledge without practice.
Right. Right. It's theory without practice.
Yes. So to be a good musician, Steve has to learn music, learn his notes, but do what in reality to be a good musician?
Sure.
Practice, huh? Practice, practice, practice. Every artist, there is no one artist that I know that does not work to death. If you look at their life, it is hard.
Not any
It's
that
hard.
are good. Yeah.
Yes. Or soccer player. I mean, you guys, you stole Messi from us. You know, I don't know if you follow soccer,
After he
but
was about
Messi,
90.
he plays for Miami. They
Yeah, he's
are
old though now.
they are the MLB. Uh, they are football, not football, soccer champions of the US.
Yeah,
And he's amazing. But if you look at him or Cristiano Ronaldo, the amount of work that they do is incredible. They are
sure.
always tinkering,
Yeah,
tinkering, and tinkering. Okay,
that's
thank
true.
you. I'm through.
Please go ahead, Richard.
Oh, thank you. I was just going back to the opening, the idea that he was out trying to see how nature works, um, and uh, and then it folded, or as we read down, it got into this whole idea that um, human beings are, if you want, designed to be comprehensivists, and everybody else was designed to be a specialist in their own kind of right. And also the reference to science and truth. And all of a sudden it started to kind of register in my mind that science in seeking truths is not trying to seek an absolute truth. Science is trying to continue to unfold what nature is all about and how we are part of that whole system. And that led me to thinking that humankind has, to a certain extent, missed the boat. They've missed the idea that our function is of this um, helping to maintain the integrity of this ever-generating universe as comprehensivist. But it seems to me that the wrong turn we've made is that we have interpreted what we have been given as something that is in the direction of becoming the super specialists, the above everybody else specialists. And in that sense, I'm putting out the thought that um, we missed this message of comprehensivity. We missed this idea of the centrality of relationships. We've missed this whole seeking of patterns or understanding of patterns. And if I can be a bit of um, uh, a critic, I guess, of what Manu was saying, that we have to be tinkerers. And to me, the tinkerer's analogy is one of saying we have to work through the nodes, if you want, and not through the patterns or the relationships. Um, yeah, anyway, so it's really just opened up this whole idea that I think we as humans are perhaps missing uh, the idea of being comprehensivists, and we have misinterpreted it to thinking we are the super specialists, and we should have domain over nature. Um, and in some senses, the religions of the world and the mythologies of over the centuries have fed into that. That we're somehow or another the super um, beings in this whole pattern of universe and its eternal regeneration. So I'm finished, but I put it out there for
Well, Richard,
dialogue.
what's the distinction between absolute and generalized principles?
Um, I don't know where you're coming from in
Yeah,
terms of absolute and
Richard,
generalized.
Richard wasn't talking about absolute principles.
I thought he was talking about absolute truth or absolute versus like the idea.
Yes, I was looking at what's in the textbook that talks about science and then in brackets truth.
Right.
And truth in many senses is interpreted as absolute.
Right.
That's what the materialist sciences have been all about.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
maybe the difference between absolute, eternal, and generalized. Maybe I think we
The word
well,
absolute,
in one sense, absolute to me is the outcome of a specialist's way of thinking about nature and themselves. In other words, it's like I figured it out, closed, finished, it's done. Um, Comprehensivists, I think, are those who understand what you're talking about in terms of generalized principles.
So the ones that
I
are more adaptable, where they can actually bring in information and be applied to context and not necessarily impose its will, if you will,
Yeah,
over the environment itself. So
yeah.
it's adaptable to the feedback. It's the feedback system that you're able to take in, and it's not one of dominance, but rather one of integration.
Yeah, and it's one of that leads to, if you want, pattern integrity or relational integrity, and not something that's absolute in the mind of the discoverer. Um, and that's all. I'm just putting it out there that I think that we perhaps have missed an understanding of comprehensivity and specialists.
can I
and
say something here,
yeah, let me
Steve?
just be
Yeah,
clear about one thing. You didn't say the word absolute at all, did you,
Yeah,
Richard? I didn't hear you say
the word
absolute.
absolute.
yeah. I use the word because I used it in the sense of the text that talked about science and bracketing truth,
Yeah.
and so truth for me is in that context was coming across as absolute
Ah,
rather than the idea of unfolding and learning more and
ah,
then picking up on the idea um, that we have been designed to be comprehensivists, not specialists.
yeah. I
Uh,
have,
and
I
I
have,
think we as human beings have misunderstood what we were designed for, and we think we are the super specialists.
yeah. Okay. I
Anyway,
I have a
that's
comment to make on that section as well, but Manu, you want to contribute something here at this point? Go ahead.
Yes, yes. And I was saying that to clarify on Joe's question.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, is always good to come to first principles that we know
Right.
that are in there. And the very first principle that we know that hasn't changed since the emergence of consciousness from or self-consciousness is that we are in something.
Right.
We're not out, we are in. Nobody has ever proven that it's been out or have been out. So if we are in, therefore our effort is from inside, even if we
Mm.
imagine it from inside. So, so we have things or patterns that seem to work for us, or in certain way repeat, that you say we've like, we identify. And we generalize.
Right.
them.
That's a
We-
good way of putting it.
Yes, we generalize. That's what universe is dynamic. It's always ever changing because there are things that seem to be working for a while and they work no more. They have to be discarded. So you have a reflux and reflux, always, but generally expanding because knowledge is expanding and practice is expanding. And that generalized principle mathematically should become tangent to something that is a general principle that's always so.
Yeah. Well, just it's interesting on that because if the generalized principle is that we're in something, then that to me is another uh, possible observation that humankind has missed that generalized principle because humankind seems to think in terms of in and out, seems to think in terms of othering others and dismissing them or expelling them or ostracizing them or discounting them. So that's interesting. And had we really taken up the comprehensivity idea, I think we would have been quicker to capture what you're just saying, that we're in, we're all in. There is no out.
But the fact that I
Yeah.
dismiss Richard doesn't mean that Richard doesn't exist. It is a biased expression of mine. Let me repeat it. The fact that I dismiss Richard doesn't mean that Richard doesn't exist. Because conceptually, we have said Richard is a fractalization of a superior or a more primal principle. We read in other books that we are centers in thought of universe or universes. We are nodal points in universe. So the fact that it happened that Richard's note and Manu's note be kind of perceptive, or Manu perceive Richard's, but Richard doesn't yet perceive Manu. And Manu discard of recognized Richard. This is now an act of application in reaction to the awareness of Richard. The awareness, the Manu to Richard is vectorial. I noticed that there is an anomaly there, or there is a vector point that is Richard. And Richard is like in there. Now, consciously now, that is spatial. Notice the difference between awareness and consciousness is much more powerful than awareness. And I think it's even 3 times more powerful because it's spatial in our manifestation. Whereas awareness is me to Richard, is a line. So now that I'm aware of Richard, me, that awareness is towards there, is my field radiating out and seeing an anomaly. Do I recognize Richard? And do I take in consideration Richard in my expansion of awarenesses? Or do I ignore him? And do I, even worse, do I contemptuously ignore Richard? That is to try to, when I say contemptuously ignore Richard, that is me using the vantage position from which I am, hammer on Richard. I become a tyrant to Richard. I exploit Richard. I do this. All of these are actions. And what Fuller called anticipatorily design is that once I notice Richard, even if Richard is not relevant, is not threatening to me, I enact a relationship because we are unfolding. So I anti-entropically fold one more. That is, consciously create that link with Richard in such a way that there is flow of energy through and from to me in such a way that we can use it in a way that is progressive to our endeavor. That is what I thought could maybe help. I don't know if I've been too much contorted, but it was in reaction to Joe in the first place. Okay.
That's right. Do you want to go for it, Lee?
No, I'm through.
You want to what, Lee?
I say I'm through with what I was saying.
Thank you. I just asked Lee if she wanted to share. Why don't you go ahead and share, Lee? You're waiting for me?
Yeah, because you had a comment.
I know, but my comment relates to everything that's been said so far and goes one step further. So why don't you go ahead?
Well, I wanted. I have a question of what something Manu has said, that when it's done with, we must just throw it out. And that brought me to the thought of the first electric car. The first car was electric, and it could not handle going on the dirt road for any length of time. It was just too difficult for the electric car to do. But look at what is happening now. We've got electric cars going everywhere. Sorry, I got hiccups. And luckily, we didn't throw away that idea. That idea was still pertinent to our lives. I'm through.
Okay, good. Thank you, Lee. My thought went back to the same point that Richard and that Joe has talked about, and I agree. I don't think that I don't think I think when people say, "Well, I'm in something," they say something's going on around me. And I agree with Richard. They see it more as otherness. Something's going on around me, and it's too easy for people to leave themselves out. Um, because everything else is going around them in such a major way. And the idea that there's in and there's out, at one level, there's this polarity of inness and outness. And when I become a comprehensivist, I realize that inness and outness happens at the same time. That can create cognitive dissonance, but that's a sign of intelligence. There's an in and an out. I'm both in and I'm both out. And it's too easy for me to think I get left out. I wanted to come back to that same wording that you guys all noticed, and I have a little audio here too to help out. What am I looking for? Oh yeah, I'm looking for this because it's shared around. Okay, so this is where this is the same paragraph everybody got caught up on, or at least got focused on. He points out that generalized principles are eternal truths, which is kind of interesting. That's an editorial statement to say, as opposed to special case statements or transient facts. To me, that's particularly interesting because as such, are inherent aspects of reality waiting to be discovered. Only human beings are able to discern such truths. these generalized principles or these, a bee can see generalized principles. They understand pollinating a flower and making honey, and they operate in that system and seem to comprehend enough to participate in it fully, but they're not able to abstract it and go to the generalized principle idea. Um, so there are specific principles. How do bees act? And if those patterns able to be are able to octavate, to have octaves, to create a pattern that applies in other realms, bees can't necessarily do that as far as we're aware of, but human beings certainly can. Uh, and he's calling these generalized principles are eternal truths, which is interesting. That's one interesting definition of a truth. Only human beings are able to discern such truths, and then he calls them science, or at least Amy Fuller says that these generalized principles are eternal truths that we call science, and thereby participate in their own evolution or design. Um, and here's the big problem I have. Just as bees are meant to cross-pollinate, we are meant to solve problems. This has always been interesting to me that Buckminster Fuller saw the purpose of human beings to solve problems. I've always had resistance to this because to me, the purpose of my life is not to solve a problem, it's simply to observe life unfold. I mean, I didn't solve a problem when I had kids, right? I didn't solve a problem when I got married. I wasn't solving a problem when I conceived babies. I wasn't solving a problem. I was just living life, right? So I've always had big issues with this idea that human beings are meant to solve problems. I think there's no doubt in my life that this gave Buckminster Fuller a purpose in life, and that it made a difference for him because he was on the verge of suicide. He had a family. He was going to leave his family behind, including his daughter, and then decided, hey, if I stay here and just solve problems, I'm in pretty good shape. That's one good reason to be alive. But I don't think that the average human is here to solve problems. I think I love what Manu said about being a fractal. That Richard is a fractal of a primal principle. I love that. I think that's absolutely perfect. You and I are fractals of a higher principle. In fact, Jesus talked about this in John chapter 15 in the New Testament. He said, I am the vine, and you are the branches on the vine, and that God is the gardener. That's, to me, that's profound. Um, and certainly a branch on a vine doesn't solve problem. I imagine that one could look at a branch and say it solves problems, but um, a branch just is being a branch. Human beings are just here to be human beings. Now, if we want to solve problems, that's really cool. I want to add really something really I found really amazing. Welcome, Anne. How are you doing? In fact, we'll pause here. We're talking about these general principles, but before I do my next thing, how are you feeling, Anne? Do you have a particular shape you're in today? How are you feeling, and what do you anticipate getting out of today's call?
Okay, I'm happy. I'm happy that I managed to make it. At least I have an hour with you guys, yeah. And the shape I'm in, I would say right now, I think is entropy. Yeah, we're going through some entropy right now. You know, yeah. I'll let you know when it becomes syntropy or it becomes what's the other word for it when everything comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, carry on, please.
Okay, really good. Joe has his hand up, but Joe, I'm going to finish my statement unless you want to jump in here on something. Joe, what do you want to do?
Go right ahead.
Okay, good. I want to share this because I was listening tonight on my way home, and this just blew me really away. And I think I have exactly the right place. This guy is Rick Beato. This guy is as a music producer. He goes way back, and he does a podcast on musicians and music. And I think I've got it at exactly the right place here. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. Because when we talk about what is the purpose of a human being, I think that we're going to reverse engineer the purpose of a human being as he gives this example. Let's hope I hit it the right place.
The same thing starts happening with drum parts. Guys playing a drum part, and you're like, you know what? This would be a great take of this first verse if this one hi-hat wasn't a little drag. Well, let's move it back a little bit, or let's move it forward, whatever. And then you move that, and you're like, well, the snare after it kind of sounds weird because we move that forward. Now the snare sounds like it's dragged, so we do that. Then you're like, well, you know what? Let's just look at the grid lines, the bar lines, and we'll just move them to that. Then you start cutting out, moving them. Then they give you this tool called Beat Detective. Just lyric, you go in and you just.
I think that I got too far in. Let me see if we can try this here. I hope I find it real fast. Thank you.
Punch in, fix the line, punch out. Fast forward to 1998 with Cher, the Believe song. They invented this thing, Auto-Tune. That I've talked about this a million times on here. But Auto-Tune was a plug-in that would go into these DAWs, digital audio workstations. So you'd have something like Pro Tools or Logic or Ableton. What you do is you take the vocal, let's say the song's in C major. Any note in the key of C major, it would tune the note to. Well, T-Pain and people like that realized if you put it on a really hard tuning, it would make it sound like a keyboard. And that's what they did in the Believe song. Well, then the same thing starts happening with drum parts. Guys playing a drum part, and you're like, you know what? This would be a great take of this first verse if this one hi-hat wasn't a little drag. Well, let's move it back a little bit, or let's move it forward, whatever. And then you move that, and you're like, well, the snare after it kind of sounds weird because we move that forward. Now the snare sounds like it's dragged, so we do that. Then you're like, well, you know what? Let's just look at the grid lines, the bar lines, and we'll just.
Okay, this is about to get to the good part, and you'll see what I'm saying. It's only a half a minute away, and rather than try to find it, I'm just going to keep letting it play. The whole thing's going to last about another 2 minutes at most. Here we go.
Move them to that. Then you start cutting out, moving them. Then they give you this tool called Beat Detective. Then you can actually quantize an entire part. So then it becomes like a drum machine. So it's not human-like. Here's an example of a quantized.
Okay, so basically what he's talked about is how science has taken these general manifestations of human behavior and then digitized them and made them into machines, right? Now he's going to give us a real good example. And if we reverse engineer this example, I think I'm going to find a case for disagreeing with Buckminster Fuller. So here we go. Let's be patient.
Drum part. It's John Bonham's drum performance from Fool in the Rain. That's a shuffle. Here's what it sounds like as a machine. Now here's the actual human performance of John Bonham. Notice the swing in it. Once you.
Okay, so did you guys all hear the difference between the digitized thing and what the human being did? And what was interesting, the human being did the thing first, and then the digital thing tried to mechanize what the human being did. And did you hear the difference? This is profoundly profound to me. It's just profoundly profound. This is the quantized. That's how a machine interpreted what a human being did. This is what the human being did.
Now here's the actual human performance of John Bonham. Notice the swing in it.
Say, did you guys all hear the difference between those two things? Yeah, okay, Richard heard the difference. Manu heard the difference. So, I don't think the purpose of John Bonham didn't sit down at his drum set and said, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm gonna show a machine how to swing with a drum part before the machine screws it up. No, John Bonham was just being a fractal of a fundamental principle, manifesting and allowing life to unfold. And I think that's really what we're doing. And sometimes I even solve a problem. So I'm going to give Buckminster Fuller that. I'm going to give Buckminster Fuller that much of a thing. I think the purpose of a human being is to watch the miracle of life unfold. That's what my purpose is. And if I come down to this planet and I have a few babies, that's wonderful. And if I come down to this planet and I don't have any babies at all, that's okay. I'm watching life unfold. To quote Manu, I'm a fractal of a generalized principle. Oh, I love that. Jesus said we are the branches on the vine, and like it's ahead of it, because Jesus was talking about grapevines. Grapevines are literally fractals. They're genetic clones. So for Jesus to pick he could have picked a mustard seed, he could have picked an oak tree, but he picked a freaking grapevine and said, I'm the vine, you are the branches. And What does a branch do? It goes out and curls around. No two branches do exactly the same thing. To go along with the branches like exemplify entropy. They just go in any freaking direction they want to go. I don't know. I just think that's wonderful, and I am not a problem solver. And if I were, I'd be a failure in life. I have solved some problems, but my real thing in life is I had 5 beautiful babies. I like to tell people, yeah, I did 5 things right. And sometimes they were an accident. I didn't. Okay, I'm complete. Joe, your hand is up. And you need to unmute, my friend. Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So there's a couple things. I mean, I really think that that's a profound thing that you actually just shared, and I'm not going to go into too deeply into the mechanistic part because I think we've covered that, but I do think that there are massive ramifications for that. I think that we understand that mechanism, or kind of a mechanical way of thinking, is not long-term productive, yet we seem to be, even at least for now, headed down that road to some degree. And I have some reasons as to why I believe that to be the truth. I'm hopeful I'm wrong, but there is some evidence that we're headed down that way. I do think that we do understand more regenerative approaches, but that doesn't mean that we won't be more mechanistic in the way we approach things. But that's abstract, but I don't want to go into detail because it would take too long. What I did find very, very interesting was, I was just thinking about this, and maybe I'll throw it out there. When you talk about in and out, the idea of in and out, that you have to be inside in order. I really think that maps onto the subject-object relationship. So that the subject is observing the object. And this is where the idea of Bucky, I'm a verb. So this is the way, you think about language, and we're talking about how to be whole, is that when the subject and the object realize that it's an awareness that exists. So if I say, I am aware of my awareness, that's a subject object verb, but that's something reflecting back on itself. And so this comes back to the whole idea of then we use tools to understand the world. And that was my point a little bit earlier, things like time and things about how things exist in the world. But this is essentially a way of reflecting back. Because let's just say if you're not in, you're not noticing on anything on the outside. If there's no subject, there's no object. So if you look at it from that perspective, you take the subject out, there's no out. And so the concepts of lag and the concepts of everything I was talking about a little bit earlier, but that in and out whole idea is really relates directly to to what it means to be aware of self-aware that you exist in the world. And then this relates directly to the idea, then what is it that humans then can spot? They can spot patterns because they notice the patterns within themselves. And if they notice the patterns within themselves, they can change themselves. And if they can change themselves, they can actually change other things in the world. So you start to be able to notice things. And that's the difference between being able to shape something. And this is what Bucky's talking about. He's saying that human beings are unique. And so that is, that there is the idea that we're pattern-seeking creatures. I said machines earlier, but creatures. that being in and out and understanding that relationship, even how it manifests itself in our language, it really is kind of something like referring back to itself. And if you think about it, I can share something. I gotta find it, but it's essentially it's a recursive program. In literally like a computer program, where the function's calling on itself. And if the function's calling on itself, that's the idea of the subject-object relationship to some degree. And well, I won't go into the whole thing, but essentially that's the long and short of it. So it was interesting. I mean, I thought that was worth mentioning only because it pertains directly to the text, so far as that, why is Bucky saying that we're unique? It, to Richard's point, doesn't mean that we have dominion over the world, but it does mean that we are unique. And so, and I would just argue really quickly, I would say, yeah, you're right, Steve. The bee is just observing. It's just being, right? It's not solving a problem. But our ability to change things can create problems.
But Joe, I'd actually say that the bee solves a problem. Those guys communicate with each other. They find out where the food is. They follow each other's instructions. They care for the hive. I think they do solve problems, but I don't think they're here to solve a problem being a bee. So
Right. Okay.
maybe it's a rhetorical issue, but
No. That's a very good point. It's a very important distinction that they do solve a problem on a micro level, but what the overall purpose is very different.
and that's exactly right on a micro level. In other words, in their octave, in their realm of existence, they are solving problems. And they don't have the ability, like human beings, to, I said the word octavate, to see the pattern manifested at different levels of experience. So I do agree with you in that regard. Right.
Yeah, and part of my worry is that, and I'm not disagreeing with you, is like, well, let's go to the mechanistic idea of and I hate to bring this up because I do bring it up too much, but let's just bring it up, the idea of an AI, right? An AI has an objective function. It's solving a problem with no consequences, but it's solving a problem. And I don't know if that's really purpose.
Well, it solves a problem and it does have consequences. And I agree with Manu's statement here.
It has consequences to us, not to that, not to it.
Well, except that if we want to turn it off, that's a consequence for it. And I agree with Manu's idea here is the AI is unable to act anti-entropically. Maybe I don't agree with that. An AI can tell us how to build a better house, but it's not going to synthesize. It can do things like add numbers and multiply, and it can figure out exponentials, but it's not going to be inspired. It's probably not going to have Einstein's vision when he's sitting in a train and the other train goes by and he hears the sound go and figures out E equals mc squared just because a train went by, right? That's what Einstein did. I don't think
you won't have the experience, but it will be able to make the connection.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't think an AI is going to be as creative as a human being could be. But I think AI is going to be more creative than many human beings. So I'm going to shut up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No. So I mean, I'm done. I mean, my main point was the ability to look back on ourselves and shape ourselves, and ability to identify patterns is really the main point. And that relates directly and how that relates to our language itself with a relationship between a subject and an object. and the idea of a subject being in, and then the idea of an object being out. So it's you're inside and then you're outside, you're looking out. That's how the mind perceives the world. And then if you take the subject out, you take the observer out, then there's no object.
Cool.
All right,
You complete?
I'm good.
Go ahead, Manu.
Okay. And I wasn't muted. Do you know Zania Monet?
Say that again.
Zania Monet. She's
Mm-mm.
viral. She's viral. She's the greatest star today. But she's AI.
Oh, I do know who you're talking
She's
about.
quantized.
It's pretty weird.
And then I put it there that if I compare that to James Brown, yes, I might have some excitement now, but I still prefer James Brown. Zaina Monet cannot perform at a concert. You can't call Zaina Monet at the concert to perform. They try these holograms speaking. It doesn't hold. That is the first point. It's clear. If we are here to enjoy the music, well, we have a quantized music in Zenia Monet. She is a phenomenon among youths in the world. But she's just that. Second point. Steve, you live life. But let's just take the Argan plane and introduce the notion of time as a variable. Is Steve now a quantum? And Steve at time plus t, a period, another quantum, is it the same? Does that quantum think about the Steve now to just live life? If life is defined as a dynamic flow of energy, that is conscious.
Those are rhetorical questions. You're not asking me. Are you asking me? Because I actually have an opinion about that.
No, I'm just making to make my point. We're not going to agree on it. You know, like I respect.
We might agree.
It's hard to say for somebody in gravity that we are, whether we think radiation or not, does not negate that our consciousness in gravity is temporal. It will go. So it is not eternal. And as such, we anti-entropically have to build things, but because it's built from what has come inside, we've seen copies of fractals and we like it self-consciously. And this thing is moving all the time, swirling. We have to hold the sails. And those sails are turning, they're twisting, they're moving like that, but we have to hold. And that's it, like, you know, like a pilot, you know, the real pilots on this aircraft, you know, like landing or actually taking off. That's it. We hold on to that because we want to enjoy that journey. That goes, I want to fly to Salt Lake City now from Cape Town. That is half a period of a day. I mean, I don't know. It's 20 hours flight from here or 18 hours if I were to fly direct. So I hold on to it to be sailing on the plane of travel where I can move on the plane. I mean, when the plane is taking off, nobody ever tell anybody that, stand up, you will die. Everybody buckles, right? So, Steve, AI will not tell you to buckle. An AI guy will not buckle. He's just go with the flow. That was my intervention. Thank you.
Is everybody complete? If I were to express my opinion, I would tell you that time is an illusion. The past and the present are all happening right now, and it's my brain that differentiates between one or the other. Um, and in fact, I've talked to you before about what I call the spine line, time and space as a fourth dimension of reality, which is consistent with Einstein. So, but we won't go there. Okay, good. We're about to continue our reading. Is everybody ready to continue reading? Okay, good. Oh my goodness, wonderful. Okay, here we go. I'll read this next paragraph or so. Comprehensive. Fuller was profoundly impressed by the danger of over-specialization. He he was once asked to speak at a convention for the American Association for Advancement of Science, and the experience provided one of his best parables. Whether by luck or through Fuller's characteristic genius for detecting significant patterns, he happened to encounter two papers with a striking similarity, presented in different sections of the conference. The reports on biology and anthropology both happened to discuss the phenomenon of extinction, the former investigating various extinct species, and the latter extinct human tribes. Both papers concluded that the cause of extinction was overspecialization, which, taken by an extreme, precludes general adaptability. Fuller took the message to heart. He says his predilection for thinking comprehensively began with his World War I Navy experience, belonging to the last generation of sailors that proceeded to ship to shore radio telephone equipment. Officers in 1917 were still trained as comprehensivists. Everyone had to be capable of handling any job on the ship, for voice communication with land was not yet possible. The need for all members of the crew to act quickly in an emergency demanded quick, comprehensivist thinking and flexibility to take over any job without instructions from superior naval powers. A second lesson was that a sailing vessel is itself a manageable whole system, and every member of her crew is working toward the success of the whole ship. It seemed to Bucky a very desirable way to operate. He began to see that our entire planet is one system and deliberately set out to understand the interrelatedness of human affairs. He later coined the famous spaceship Earth to symbolize this approach, as it became ever more apparent that effective design had to recognize the existence of a finite and inescapably connected whole system world. Lack of such awareness leaves us stranded on a ship where the starboard side short-sightedly using much of its time and energy in an effort to sink the port side and vice versa. Fuller then calls our attention to a subtle irony implicit in the compartmentalization of the sciences, which require an ever narrower focus on one's pursuit as one pursues a given scientific principle more deeply, as if to deny the relatedness of various aspects of scientific knowledge. At the beginning of this century, he recalls chemistry and biology, for example, were totally separate fields, the former encompassing chemical elements and their reactions, and the latter pondering the classification of species and the mystery of evolution. Moreover, all branches of science involve philosophical speculation. Time was given to questions such as what Time was given to questions such as what is life, and the differences between life and non-life could not have seemed more self-evident. Any comments or questions so far? Okay, does anybody else want to read?
Sorry,
want my reading?
I was on mute. I had something to say.
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead, Richard.
Or after that.
Well, for me, it's fascinating that what you've just read says what needs to be said about humans have tried to turn themselves into specialists instead of comprehensivists.
Yeah.
And if there's a place in the world that represents this better than perhaps a lot of other places, it's universities, higher education.
Right.
And to some extent, relating to Anne, It's what primary education has been trying to do as well. So it makes it easier when you get to the university to put the emphasis on analysis to get out of the institution with a piece of paper that says you are now a specialist in something. Um, and so it's amazing that universities should have been the places where what we just read, all of these interacting departments doing so on a daily basis instead of separating out into their own little domains and silos and everything else. And so, what a wonderful sort of recognition that he made at that conference to actually somehow or another understand that in two different rooms there was two different things being talked about that were concluding the same outcome. Yeah. Anyway, that's uh, I really think that we've um, as human beings have missed this message of comprehensivity. Um,
Cool. You complete?
yeah,
Go for it,
just
Joe.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, there's a graphic I'll show in a minute here, but you know, I I think that the idea, uh, kind of the specialization and how it actually emerged, um, it really did look at something like efficiency over effectiveness. And that distinction is really something that's often lost. You even kind of see that often within an organization. An organization, people will often look at what their part is, and they'll find out how to do something more efficient, but it won't necessarily be effective for the entire whole of the organization. And that also works as well within the idea of, you're looking at a part of the ship, not the ship itself. And so this is, you focus on the part, not the whole. And what you lose in that, the really important part, is that you lose the relationship between things. Why am I doing something in the first place? And, that's essentially where wisdom is derived from. There's an awareness that comes along with that. So what happens is, and this is what essentially he says in Spaceship Earth, and as well as Grunch of the Giants, is that over specialization makes it very easy to manipulate, because you have people focused on the part and not the whole. Now, I will say that, there are traditional forms of learning that I think that, were where you were focused on more of generalized learning rather than specialized learning. And something that I saw at my own personal, my university, was
comprehensive.
Yeah, but it's comprehensive, but I would even say generalized, because comprehensive is a little bit beyond just even making the connections between disciplines. I think comprehensivist has an ethics to it. And so I think that it's a little bit deeper in that sense. But the idea that, because there are people that are holistic thinkers, but comprehensivist is, part of that, making 100% of, making everything work for 100% of humanity. There's an ethics that's involved in that. And that there's a deeper, I think that's a little bit deeper, in my opinion.
Well, you could say, what's the ethics? I mean, if you're starting with the whole, all of humanity,
right,
and that's your starting place, the ethics is built in.
You can make that case. You can also make what I was saying is that you can be a generalist and actually be unethical. So I mean, like, so the idea you're not necessarily, you can start with somebody that can make the connections between a whole hell of a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that you're ethical. So and I do know a lot of people in that and that have done that.
Yeah, which means it means that they're not comprehensive.
Correct. That was my point. So the one thing I would say is when an example of this, that my university, and this is just one example of how you can narrow a person's thinking, is that you have somebody, we had an actuarial program. Now, the actuarial program was one of the best in the country, right? There was University of Nebraska and Temple University. What the hell's an actuarial program? I mean, that's to take a test. You're only passing a test. That's the difference. Everybody, most people that are actuaries are math majors.
Yes.
And so that's more comprehensive. It's not fully comprehensive, but it's definitely more at the level of being more generalized, because you're learning how different, how mathematical models work. And I think that highlights exactly what Fuller's saying, is that now you're teaching people to just take a test. That's not somebody that's going to be focused on the whole. They're only focused on a very narrow part. And that narrow part was only related to, obviously what would have been a monetary reward. Or in some cases, it would, allow people to remain in the country. So that's an example, a concrete example of how you can take a mind and make them focus only on the part, as opposed to asking, that maybe the more important questions of not only how do things interrelate and how does cause and effect, actually occur, but then why am I doing this in the first place? All you know is you're taking the test in order to get a reward. So it's like a carrot and stick model. And that's not necessarily, that's almost like a stimulus and response versus actually one that contemplates the connections between things and the purpose behind.
So you're complete?
I'm complete.
Good. Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah.
Then,
I really like, sorry.
go ahead. Well, Desmano, did you want to jump in on one particular point there? Or you're ready to wait for Anne to complete her point?
I can wait for Anne, but I was ready to jump in for Joe, but it's fine. I think that will.
Yeah, why don't you finish Joe's one, Manu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, has anybody heard about the T approach to education or at the workplace?
I've heard of one.
The
Yeah.
specialization,
Yeah,
right?
at Columbia University, we had the curriculum was divided between the core curriculum and the electives. In other words, you were, like there was a balance in it, and you could come and choose. You have a core. Let's just say you studied engineering. You have a core in engineering, but in your evaluation, your GP, you will have a component that usually is balanced, of elective. You can decide to take philosophy and all of these things, and that counts towards your grade, your average grades. In the workplace, they call it the T, in that you should have the spread as developed as a depth or in balance with the depth. And the third point that I wanted to put here was that all of this talk that we've been having is that we have forgotten the general principle that we accepted from the beginning.
Mm.
The balance of generalize, that is all the principles, to my applications, to my knowledge, to my specialized knowledge. You should always have a balance. And notice that is the symbol for it is a T, because the two come in, it is a dynamic balance that comes in at 90 degrees of each other, topologically. I must know general principle, but I must constantly apply them or strive to apply them in order to have a result that is diagonal, that is towards where I want it to be. And that wanting it to be is bias, because they want to be, and it comes to what Joe said, that there are generalists who are, what would you say, Joe? That there are generalists who are
They make connections between things, but they're not
to say that they don't make the right choices.
right.
They are generalists.
Right.
Yes.
There's no ethics. There's no ethics to it.
Exact.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
the ethics, that is specialization, and
Right.
the spread, the general, should be in balance.
Correct.
One carry the other, or like that. The general principles carrying your ethics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to say. That was my intervention, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah, that's fundamental.
Cool. Go ahead, Anne.
Sorry, I'm writing it down. Carries the ethics. Okay. Yeah, actually it was because of what Joe said, we lose a lot of people, they lose the relationship between things, focusing on a part instead of the sum of the whole, right? And just wanted to share that experience that just yesterday, with the parents I was speaking to, just that I remember, I don't know, I think I may have mentioned to the group chat into our meetings that I'm realizing that a lot of the parents that we have today, they really don't know what we've been trying to do all along, because the ones who knew us and saw the results of it, their children are all grown and left a few of them, like less than 10%, in some cases only 2%, whose children came through our system and are showing up really well out there. The rest are still have got kids all in secondary schools or primary, or the primary kids' parents have got children in kindergarten. So they completely have no clue what we've been trying to do all these years. I'm like, wow, I have to start all over again. So yesterday, I spoke to the kids, all the secondary children, and they got it. So I knew I had to talk to the parents. So yesterday was the first batch, and that school needed more of the parents to attend, but it was 12. So never mind, I spoke to the 12. And I was talking to them about the children being 120 years old in 130 and 20.
And your video and audio are stalling. If you would turn off your video, maybe we could hear your audio. I'm sorry, but you froze.
Because that's how long they will for, right? Usually. So, and then AI, and it's breaking. Is it breaking on my side?
Yeah, you're back again, but we missed a lot of what you said because it started to blip. Maybe turn off your video and try to say.
Okay. Where did you hear until?
I'm not sure where you left off. Does anybody want to give her a clue? Because you started breaking up right away, Anne.
When she was talking about the kindergarten.
Yes, okay. So the children are still in kindergarten, So I realized that they really do not know what we've been trying to do all along. Like, wow, there's a lot of work to go and re-educate all the parents again, right? So right there, here we are trying to move everything forward, basing it off, and because everything about Bucky and what we discussed here is so powerful for me in trying to move forward. So the talk I gave the parents is like parenting the age of AI, but I'm not even talking about AI anymore because when the children can live until 2130 and 2140, AI is going to come and go. The parents, AI is already passe, right? And we don't even need to teach the kids because they already know how to use it because of all the years using. No, is to get them AI proofed, right? And then the other one is to be able to work in a world where they'll be paid not to work, right? And they'll be so that they what is that? They will live in a world where they will be paid not to work, right? So which is we talked about it with Bucky about the universal basic income, but I'm talking about beyond that, right? And there at the end of it, I had a parent who asked, said, Anne, I'm trying to decide whether to continue to stay on in this school. The child is in year 6, or to send to another school that has more academics. I'm like, wow, we're giving more academics. Sorry?
Wow. No, I was saying wow.
Huh. Yeah, and here we are giving your kid more academics than any other school is giving, and beyond that, and he's deciding on whether to stay put or to go into one that's very academic, which is the specialization, right? So I was like, wow. So because when you went down the path of specialization and being a comprehensivist, yes, right there in the meeting, that meeting, the session, I had another father who came from a really big view. So one parent came from that view, and how much more we're teaching. So I say I'm building in your childhood the minute they come to us at primary. I get what you're saying, and so on. And in his job is actually to cut down the workforce for organizations and everywhere else, is to cut down the workforce in organizations, right? He said he's the most hated man right now. He says it's going to happen within 2 years. 2 years, a lot are going to happen, you know? So I was like, wow, I've got two. One, now that you mentioned the sum of the whole, he gets it. He's like coming from such a huge space, and a parent that comes from that small space of specialization. So thought I just want to share that. So this session has been, I'm just so glad to be able to make it back for this session. I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was really
Oh,
good.
good. Okay. It's about time for us to do our takeaways too. So, Anne, thank you. Do you have a takeaway from today's meeting, and would you like to pass it on?
Can I?
What's
Feel
that?
free. Yeah, she said go ahead and do your takeaway.
You should. Okay, Lee, do you want to give your takeaways for tonight?
Can that be my takeaway?
Yes,
No.
that can totally be your takeaway. That can be your takeaway for tonight, Lee. I
Mm.
mean, Anne, that'll be perfect. And then we'll just pass it on to Lee and we'll continue from there. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I'll pass it on. Yes. So Lee, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, I was hoping I'd hear more. It was very frustrating to hear that some of the students that you have that are young, very young, are not wanting to see what the future has happened with the older students and how they have progressed to an extreme. I like that, to have that given to these youngsters the parents forget about the youngsters. They're probably enjoying the whole thing.
And so,
But I hope, Anne, that you could get these parents clued in to what the school is doing with all of these. Do you have seniors in school at this time? And
yes, seniors.
that's what I thought. Then these seniors
Lee,
need to come.
Yeah.
What's that, Anne?
It was breaking a bit, so I couldn't hear your question.
Oh, my question was, do you have a senior class that could maybe come and talk to the parents of the kindergartners or first graders that have no idea what you are doing? I think, like Manu was saying,
Yeah, I even have, yes, I do have senior classes right now.
and they are talking to the adults, the parents. Can you get them to do that?
Yeah, that's quite, I do have parents who will speak on our behalf too. So it looks like I'll have to get that going.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Because that would be terrible to have these kindergartner parents that have no idea what the future is for their students.
Sure. So what's your takeaway?
My takeaway is that we need to well, I am really on to this point with Anne and her school. But the tea that Manu was talking about was in my boys' colleges and how they learned that what they wanted all their lives to do was not what they were supposed to do. And I think that a child should be able to balance out their lives and see which one is making them happier. The tea that Manu was talking about was definitely a hard blow to my boys, both my boys. My youngest quit school. He said, I don't want to do that. I don't know what that computer says I should be doing. I want to do what I want to do. So that's my takeaway.
Want to pass it on?
Joe, what have you gotten out of today?
I mean,
And how are you feeling?
yeah, I mean, I think it's always really important to talk about the comprehensivist approach. It's always special to actually be able to talk about that, specifically when Anne's there. I think that's, it's a unique opportunity. Because, how to really think holistically. When we think about things in parts, it's a really important point, because what happens is that we're curious, as what Buckminster Fuller says even about children. We're curious and we go out there and we explore things, but we become more and more specialized, and very narrow in our thinking. And, you know, what happens in that process, and it's not to say that you shouldn't have a specific skill, you know, that sometimes people will say, well, you know, they'll go to the other extreme. No, a specific skill is fine, but there is a understanding of how your skill fits into a greater ecosystem, and that's where you start to see again the connections between things. But when you're only focused on that part, the part starts to shape the whole, which means that you're no longer really a thinking human being as to what Fuller was getting at during this whole chapter. He's getting at the idea, you know, that what humans do is unique. And what humans do that is unique is that they even have an idea of a whole. They can, you know, it's that ability to look back on yourself. But there's not a lot of introspection that goes on if you're only focused on one part. So what happens is, think about it in terms of how this plays out in an organization, is that, as I was mentioning a moment ago, is that people will focus on optimizing something in their particular area. However, they won't necessarily look about how it connects to the whole. And what happens is then when you're only focused on that part, the part is shaping the whole. In other words, the part is shaping you and you're not shaping the part. So you have no opportunity for an idea like a trim tab, because you certainly don't know how the whole entire ship is going to work. So this whole to parts relationship is really important, because what happens is you really flat out lose your humanity. That's the point. You lose your humanity because you're losing your ability to think critically, which is allowing you to see as to what it is I'm doing and why I'm doing it in the first place. And so again, I think that, you know, the thing that makes us human is our ability to shape parts. But when the parts become the whole, the part is shaping us. And I think that understanding that relationship is very important, and that's what happens with specialization. That also relates back to a lot of the other things that we had discussed when, what happens when, you know, I talked about when the subject is no longer there, there is no object. But what happens, and there's always an object-subject relationship, but what happens when the object is shaping the subject? And I think that that's when the part is shaping the whole, not the whole shaping the part. So the relationship's out of balance. It's distorted. And so what does that all mean? It means that we don't contemplate the relationships with each other and the ethics. So you know, I thought it was a very interesting session. And you know, there's a lot to think about there. And I'll leave it at that. So Manu, how do you feel and what do you take away from today?
I'm feeling worried because the draft is preventing me from landing this plane. Do you hear what I say?
What's preventing you from landing?
Draft.
The draft?
Yes.
What? Which draft? What are you talking about?
I'm just saying that you know, I'm being unable. No. It's I don't know. I'm unable to land this plane of this book.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The draft.
Wind shear. It's wind shear. He's crashing his plane off the edge of the road.
I was like, wait a minute, are you watching a soccer draft or something?
There's too much intensity in the exchanges. One part of me refuses to land, the other part wants to land. So, you know, I'm in that dynamics, but it's interesting. And then it is important that we reach this point. And I think that in terms of education, what I will advocate is that probably brought, and I think that Anne is doing it, is the importance of math. I've seen here in South Africa all kind of debates that people are, and all is around. The excuses want to run away from it's too difficult. It's too this. But we've seen that math is music. We've seen that math is everything else. It's a language.
Yeah.
So that is important. And it allows us to count. We need to be accountable. Accountable. The importance of philosophy at the lowest level. It can be adapted to allow guys to radiate or girls to really radiate far mentally. And then also the importance of the technology, the tinkering, the practice of it. For example, you have a day where guys come and they play like kids with tools of their levels and trying to tinker to exchange ideas that way. And then the social. And I'm still discussing, I want to put that in the form of a triedron, but I'm still seeing where family is. I think family will be the center of that tetrahedron. Because the life of a kid and a person is to, you have like the center of gravity of that being the family. The gravitational part of it. And then I don't know how to put it, but those are my ideas. I wanted to link family to these four that I put in here to make it some robust anti-entropic device to be able to educe our children, to allow them to flourish, let me use the word, in a way that is the most expensive, but also that is the most conscious that you can have. That's my takeaway. Maybe Anne will help me in this. So, Richard, what shape are you? How do you feel? And what do you take away?
Well, having just heard what you said, I guess I could say I'm in a tetrahedral shape, and you want to know where to put the family. I struggled with that for a long time and did come up with a model that locates the family in a tetrahedral context. Um, and and also related the contextual part of our living with the linear or the methodology part, and put systemic and systematic together. And that brings me back to the beginning of of postulating this idea that humans have missed the comprehensive sort of message in Fuller's writings. And perhaps a little along the line of what Steve does every so often is, I think, sort of saying that Bucky can't be right all the time. Bucky makes mistakes. Bucky, and in the spirit of Bohm, and in the spirit of wholeness, and in the spirit of binaryism, I think this is potentially one of Bucky's mistakes, or at least it's maybe Amy's mistake in how she wrote that part. And that is that it's not either or. It's not we're the comprehensivists and everybody else are the specialists. It it speaks to what Manu was talking about in terms of the tinkering, and I replaced the word, or I created in my own mind a synergy with what he's getting at with tinkering, and the synergy for me is the dance, and it's the dance between the comprehensivist and specialists, so that there are, as Bohm pointed out, the need for the specialist. His concern was the need for the specialist gets translated into a map that is assumed to be the reality. um, and and so I think it's a dance between the comprehensivist and the specialist, and perhaps that's what's unique about us as human beings, that we're able to dance between those two, whereas perhaps others are more locked into whatever their specialty is. And so that's my big takeaway is the dance between comprehensivity and specialty, and not the binaryism of the two, and the tendency to then fall into the trap of saying, well, it can't be both and, it's got to be one or the other. I think that's a mistake. And one last thing that I take away is that um, I think it's kind of from what uh, Joe was talking about, is that um, I don't think we've been taught how to start with the whole and then come into the part. Um, I keep hearing us talk about the part, and if we don't understand it correctly, then the part starts to create the whole, and that inadvertently traps us into continuing to think part to whole. So somehow or another, we need to create a way that you always start at the whole and work down to see how a particular part or specialization, I guess, um, is part of that whole. And it's not with other parts, it's not an accumulative summing of the part to equal the whole. The whole is always out there, and the whole is always unfolding in the sense of what we started out talking about, I think. It's always unfolding, and so the truth, um, in an absolute or literal sense, is always just beyond us. And so that's why we need to keep um, dancing with universe, if you want, in terms of keeping this eternally regenerative sort of process going. And we don't get caught up in saying that we're going to at some point discover all the knowledge that there needs to be. It's not there to be discovered that way. It's there to be unfolding and and striving towards making the world work for humanity, 100% of the population. But so that's my big takeaway. Steve, how are you feeling in your takeaway?
Thanks, Richard. And do you want to share about the tea situation before I do my takeaway? Okay, I'll assume that you didn't hear me. And Anne, if you're there, just jump in any old time and I will.
Oh, sorry.
There
Yes,
you
I'm
go.
here. Yeah, actually, it's just timely because after hearing Richard and then also Joe, when you went and you talked about losing your humanity when you lose the why, it ties up with the generalized principle that Manu talks about, which carries the ethics. And then Richard was talking about you need to have the two together. So I just want to let you know there is a way to do two together. Because there is this, what we are, this tea education thingy, we were very clear that whatever we've created is actually to create polymaths. Okay. And polymaths, they specialize in a lot of, like, definitely more than one area, and very often like 5, 6, 7, it could be even 10 areas in life that they have a lot of depth in. Some may be less depth, but definitely not superficial surface type of content. And so whatever we did with our kids is actually to give them the skills to be polymaths. They are we didn't even let the kids do pure all of them have to do pure science. And we're the only school that spends 12 hours a week on physics, chemistry, biology, 4 hours for each subject in our school, while still in like middle school, year 7, year 8. We're the only school that's doing that. The rest, and then our math, we teach a lot more than what most are teaching, and we have engineers who are teaching them, not bringing in physics trained teacher. Literally they are out there, and therefore we were very clear. This was from one of our trainers, just talking about polymath. Whoa, yeah, this is what we have to train. So we realized that was what we're doing, and we're very much more deliberate doing that. And this whole idea about carrying the ethics, my God, I was like, for the longest time, like the people who do so many, I meet people at the highest level for finance and consultants and all that, and they speak very comprehensively, and they have the depth of a lot of different businesses, right? But so it never occurred to me that I will have problems on the ground with people doing the specialized job of the finance and accounting. This is just an example, huh? And I was like, what is wrong? Where are the ethics? They cannot even see the big picture. So what are our universities churning out? Because we hire them based on their qualification, right? So I just want to put it out there. Absolutely, you guys have just helped me pull all these things together just by the different things that you said. So thank you very much. Yeah, and that's exactly what you pointed out. You lose your humanity when you lose the why, and the education for numbers and a lot of other things that's very, very technical or very number based driven. They lose the why. The why is not there. And you know what? If ever I get a chance of a college or a university, and I need to redo the business, I know what I want to do with the business course, but it's the finance and accounting. I would love to do it. Accounting and financing for a regenerative economy. Okay, I'm just putting it out there. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good. Okay, wonderful. Good. Thumbs up from Joe. This has been. I'm just really thrilled today that I got to share the Led Zeppelin song on here. I think that is really cool, and that is such good music. And that is what better reason is there to be a human being than to just create and listen to music and perform music and be part of music. What a wonderful thing. Okay, good. The one thing though that hit me is this whole we have this underlying conversation about AI. I said I don't know that AI would sit on a bus and hear a train going by and come up with a theory of relativity, but maybe it might. AI might do that. It might be able to take that analog, that formula of that train going by and say, hey, there's a relationship between this and space and time. AI might have done that. I would call it pretty synergetic, but AI might have done it. But here's something AI probably wouldn't do. I just heard a great podcast this week on ethics and how Christianity, how the teachings of Jesus have changed the world. That there have been in a whole bunch of cultures, there's this idea of loving your neighbor and of taking care of the guy who's on the street that needs something. That's consistent in all of the ancient cultures. But Jesus changed a lot when he said, love your enemy. That would blow AI away right there. That cognitive dissonance, love your enemy, and yet that is the challenge of being a human being. Anyway, there's my 2 cents today. I appreciate y'all. And we didn't finish as I didn't think we would, and we have even more to go. I'm so excited, I can't stand it. We'll see y'all next week. Manu, you're saying goodbye? You got him. You're on mute, Manu.
Maybe being human is to be capable of holding at the same time two contradictory ideas in your head.
Absolutely right. Good.
Okay. So
See you all later.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye, everybody.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Bye.